The Long Dark has many fascinating characters across the entire game, but there is one character that has sparked many questions about who they are. That character is none other than Methuselah. This old man can be seen across Wintermute episodes 1 and 2 having cryptic conversations with the protagonist, Will. I know the title of this video is Who is Methuselah, but I think it might be better to ask, what is Methuselah? The reason I'm saying this is because I'm about 99.9% certain that Methuselah is not a real person, and this video will explain what I mean by this. Before I continue, please make sure to comment, like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so I can keep making videos like this. Let me begin with his name. Methuselah is a biblical name for the oldest living person, who lived for 969 years. His name means man of the dart, man of the spear, or man of the javelin. His death shall bring judgment, or death of sword in Hebrew. His appearance also offers some important and interesting information. On the game's fandom wiki page for Methuselah, it is noted that his glasses have radiant fractures in the lenses. This means that the lenses are made of glass and not plastic. Further research shows that glasses started using plastic instead of glass in the 1980s, which is around the time of Great Bear Island's peak for prosperity. The fandom wiki page also notes that he is wearing a shirt with the Omega symbol, which may be a reference to the Abrahamic god and means the end, since it is the last letter in the Greek alphabet. All of these pieces of information are important for understanding that Methuselah is very old and may represent age. He may even be a representation of the end of times as well. Now I want to sift through the conversations that Methuselah and Will have during Wintermute. Even though they are cryptic and difficult to understand, they offer very important information about who or what Methuselah is. I definitely won't be going through every bit of each conversation, but I'll make sure to cover the important stuff. The first thing you notice is that Methuselah definitely isn't a very cheery individual. The word apocalypse is mentioned a lot. We all know it means the end or total destruction of the world. What is concerning though is that Methuselah says this has happened before. He never elaborates on this, but I think he is referring to the collapse as the first apocalypse. The collapse was essentially the total devastation of the world economy. It mostly affected North America, leading to a major change to economics, trade, and resource management. For remote places like Great Bear Island, it was truly an apocalyptic scenario. The second apocalypse would be the first flare. An apocalypse of an apocalypse could refer to the continued struggle for survival in a world where remote communities were already struggling to survive. Only this time the struggle would be truly apocalyptic. Methuselah also mentions that this apocalypse was punishment for humanity's sins, but it's not about religion. Instead, it's about redemption. While redemption does have a biblical meaning, he makes it a point that this apocalypse is not about who goes to heaven and who goes to hell. Instead, it is an apocalypse by Mother Nature. So what does this all mean? I think what he is alluding to here is that the first flare was a wake-up call. It is, metaphorically speaking, a first-class ticket to the Dark Ages. The first flare was a global event that effectively EMP'd the power grid, rendering all modern technology useless. Everyone must now survive however they could. Those willing to do whatever it takes to survive will endure hardships they could never have imagined. Hunger, fear, thievery, and murder are just some of the many things that a true survivor will have to face. While some people will find this new world to be a little more challenging, those that lived comfortable lives would face insurmountable daily strife. In the end, the survivors are the ones that would need redemption from their actions. Methuselah also mentions that he is a witness. Not only is he a witness to the passing of an age, but he is there to observe. He explains that he was once a walker, and now he is a watcher. Finally, I want to analyze Methuselah in a different way. Let's look at his actions in the game. He somehow avoided all the wolves surrounding Milton. He climbed down the Milton Park climbing area without a rope. He knows what Will does to the convict Hobbs at the farmhouse. He somehow traveled across days' worth of travel distance with ease, and he somehow avoided the old bear patrolling the Mystery Lake and Broken Railroad regions. Couple this with the fact that he is old, and you can see why I think he is not even real. He is doing the impossible by appearing in places he shouldn't be in and sharing information he shouldn't know, and I think I know why this might be. If you recall the start of Wintermute, Will was in a plane crash and was thrown out of the plane. He fell several dozen feet down a cliff and somehow survived. Is it possible that Will hit his head pretty badly? Maybe not so bad that he was concussed, but maybe just enough to knock something loose. This would explain when I say that Methuselah is a hallucination that Will is seeing. Methuselah is a representation of the old world that has long passed since the collapse. He foreshadows what is coming but never explains it. This explains why everything is so cryptic and doesn't really make a lot of sense. This is all Will's mind coping with the situation he was quite literally thrown into. He is making things up to make his situation make sense, but not on purpose. He is most certainly doing it subconsciously. This subconscious representation is able to provide information that the mind has observed and taken in, but not fully processed or understood. A normal person would not observe the quiet apocalypse and think it is an apocalypse, especially as these characters in the game are used to power outages, raging blizzards, and auroras. This explains why Methuselah says he is a witness, an observer, and a watcher. It is everything that Will is observing and failing to understand. Sprinkle in some biblical references and utter nonsense, and Methuselah's cryptic nature makes more sense. He even resembles Will physically. It's hard to tell because of the massive beard, but the resemblance is hard to ignore. No one seems to know or recognize Methuselah based on a description. The last time we see Methuselah, at least so far in Wintermute, was before Will received another bonk to the head by Mathis at the end of episode 2, and another one at the beginning of episode 4. This would explain why Methuselah does not appear in episode 4. At this point, I think whatever got knocked loose in Will's head was corrected. Either that or Will was preoccupied with not getting killed by Mathis and crew. If Methuselah doesn't make any appearances in episode 5, I think that more or less proves he was never real. If he does appear, which I really hope he does, it will hopefully be preceded by another bad fall or bonk to the head. Hi, it's present ToastyBits. After reading a script that past ToastyBits wrote about 7 months ago, I want to add an additional section. This section will be talking about non-canon events and cut content because I will be referring to Predux Wintermute episode 2, which is the old version of episode 2 that was replaced with the version we have today. Take this with a grain of salt. During the events of Predux Wintermute episode 2, Will enters the maintenance yard in order to repair Jeremiah's rifle. While there, he trips on a corpse and hits his head pretty hard on a table. Later, he collapses, falls unconscious for a few hours, and awakens to the aurora lighting the surrounding lights and electronics. Methuselah is only ever seen in Predux Wintermute after Will hit his head. He wasn't in Predux episode 1 and only appeared at the very end of Predux episode 2. His dialogue in Predux is mostly the same from his appearances in Redux. I don't know what Hinterland intended to do with Methuselah before the Wintermute Redux, but I can't imagine it changed much. I find it odd that Methuselah only ever showed up after Will hit his head pretty hard. I think this idea must have carried over to Redux, assuming this really is the mechanism from which Methuselah is created. With the end of this video, I can comfortably say that Methuselah was never a real person. Instead, he serves as a guide to help Will make sense of the new world and the apocalypse that is upon him. With his past traumas and under control drinking problem, I'm not surprised that he hallucinated something so unbelievably real. I wonder if it was his mind's way of working through his issues and understanding things he didn't want to believe. While Will had Grey Mother to provide a physical therapy session, he had Methuselah to provide a self-made intervention about his past, present, and future. Only time will tell with the release of Wintermute episode 5 if Methuselah was ever real or not. The end of Methuselah's video marks the end of the Wintermute episode 2 story arc. Moving forward, lore videos will begin to focus on episode 3 and other miscellaneous lore topics from the many regions and places on Great Bear Island. If you want to catch up on any lore I've already covered, you can check out all the various playlists for the history of the Long Dark, Wintermute, Rudiger's Project, the people and places of Great Bear Island, and the Buffer Memories. They will be linked in the description. If you enjoyed this lore video for the Long Dark, please don't forget to comment, like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so I can keep making them.